listening to The Reflection Hour, a space for honest thoughts, bold shifts, and soulful self-initiation. I'm Sydney, a bar teacher, content creator, and overall a self-image alchemist. Every episode is an invitation to tune in, turn inward, and step into the you that you've always been becoming. Let's reflect. Welcome back to another episode of The Reflection Hour with your host, Sydney. Today, I really want to discuss becoming the observer in your life and of your life, because I think this is something that I've really been stepping into, because I think until you can become aware of what your own habits are, you can't exactly change them or, even decide whether or not they're working for you or they're not. So the best thing to do is actually just observe yourself and see how you react or respond in given situations with certain people or with people in general, and to really analyze the type of emotions that you emit in these given scenarios with these different people. And I think once you start to observe your own behavior, you start to see that in a lot of ways you are running a program and you usually respond the same way to specific stimuli. And how can you start to actually change how you respond and create a life that's different from what you've had up until this point? So what it means to become the observer is to essentially zoom out of your current circumstance. And I think oftentimes this can be very difficult, especially if maybe you don't like your current circumstance. It's very easy to get caught up in how you feel about it. Oh my gosh, I don't like this, I don't like that. I'm around these people, like what's going on? How did I get here? Let me retrace all my steps. Let me harp on the past that I've had up until this point and make myself feel bad because this is where I'm at. Or you could take a different approach and you could say to yourself, all right, I'm here right now. Let me not hyperanalyze how I got here. Obviously, the choices that I made in the past got me to this point right now. That is more than obvious. So how do I get where I want to go, and what new actions am I going to have to take in order to get there? And I was actually listening to this audiobook the past few days. I actually finished it yesterday. I finished it within like 2 or 3 days because I've been driving a lot of Uber Eats as like a way to kind of be a buffer between things that I'm working on. And the book was called The Path of Least Resistance, and it's by this author named Robert Fritz, and he really talks a lot about creating your life and not creating your life from a place of, oh my gosh, there's so much for me to do, I want to escape this thing that I don't like in my life, but instead, is there a vision that's grander than whatever situation I find myself in right now? And the answer is there's always a greater vision, but are you willing to actually live in the end? As Neville Goddard would say, right? You are in Barbados already. You are in your desired reality already. And then think backwards from that grand vision and trust that whatever things are going on in your life right now that you don't necessarily like, as soon as you start to take this creative approach to your life and you recognize that you're actually creating your life as opposed to you're trying to get out of a situation you don't like, maybe it's a money situation, maybe it's a health situation, and then once you get out of that situation, you kind of get lazy and you let go because you didn't really have a vision that was grander than you getting out of a problem. It was simply about you getting out of a problem. And as soon as you get yourself out of a problem, then you're good for a little while, but then you oscillate back into the problem where then you have to get yourself out of it again. And what he talks about is this being a structural problem. And one of the ways that he describes this, or he compares this to, is let's say you want to go to Hawaii and you're in New York right now. You cannot drive to Hawaii. So if the only thing you have to get to Hawaii is a car, you simply will not get there because you have the wrong structure to get you there, right? So you have to change structures and go from a car to a plane, because a plane can actually get you to Hawaii, right? So it's not that you can't get to Hawaii, it's that you need a different structure in order to get to Hawaii, okay? And this could really go for anything in your life. If you have this grand vision of becoming something and you've been thinking about it from the parameters of what you can see, obviously it's going to seem like you can never get there because you're thinking from the wrong structure. You have to change the structure from which you are operating from, because that's going to be the only way in which you actually get there. And the issue with so many people is that we're thinking about how do I get to this thing based on the fact that we're looking at our lives currently, seeing what we have currently, seeing the people that we have in our lives currently, seeing our current skill sets, and thinking, okay, well, I want to get there. It seems so impossible because it is. You're going to have to literally create a grander vision and allow that friction, right? That resistance to actually bring you there. And I've actually been testing this out in my life lately because I finally started to formulate a vision that I have for my life that supersedes anything that I'm experiencing right now, something that really gets my mind to stretch and think about the ways in which I could get there versus being like, okay, I just want to move out, right? I want to move out. I want to move into my own place. I'm looking at my life right now. It seems kind of hard, but that's what I want to do, right? And I think that's great too, having little mini goals. But I think before, at a previous time in my life, I would have these goals and visions, right? But I think a lot of it was wishful thinking because I was in the wrong frame of mind to get there. And a specific moment or a specific instance that I'm thinking about is when I went to San Francisco years ago and I was like, you know what? I'm going to move out there. I'm going to become a startup founder. Like, I'm just going to do it. So I didn't really have any experience with coding. I had very minimal experience with marketing. I had very minimal experience with a lot of things. I didn't really have an idea for what I wanted to create, but I had just decided like I want to create a startup, right? But I think my issue in my approach at that point in time is that my vision wasn't something that was concrete, right? Because I think the main motivating factor for me was like, I want to be a billionaire, which is fine. Okay. Being a billionaire is great, right? I mean, it definitely gives you a lot of freedom. I'll tell you that. You can do whatever you want. But if that's the only goal is just to make money, what are you going to do with the money? How are you going to live your life? Like, what is the purpose of you having the money? And I think that's one of the things that I've started to realize is your goals and your aspirations really can't just be about having a number in your bank account, having stuff. It has to be deeper than that. And if it's not deeper than that, then it's going to be very hard for you to keep going when the going gets tough. And that's literally exactly what happened to me. As soon as things started to get really difficult, that's when I would bow out. And it's because the vision wasn't greater than me. It wasn't making an impact that really aligned with me. And that's why I guess I would self-sabotage and go backwards and do all these things, because it was more so of something that I was aiming for that sounded good to others and that made me feel like, oh yeah, like I'm doing this, I'm doing that. There was like this elitist bent toward it. And I can understand that now, but I'm at a point in my life now where I'm like, I really want to do something that is creating a world that I would like to live in. And that is going to require some time. It's not going to happen overnight. And I think when you can get serious about the fact that things really do take time, things really don't happen overnight, it is much more settling, because then there's not this pressure that you put on yourself to have everything perfect in this specific time frame. And this is not to say that you don't have a time frame. I think it's more to say that you have to have a wider time frame on what you're trying to accomplish, and to be a bit realistic and to be patient, because I think it's so important to be patient with yourself And whenever I see myself really trying to make that timeline as short as possible, I know that it's my instant gratification self that's coming online, because I think in this society, we're so used to instant gratification, whether it's going on Instagram, getting a notification, or uploading something on TikTok and getting notifications on it, people commenting on it, just scrolling and watching these short videos and video after video, just keeping you in this cycle of a dopamine overload. It can be a lot, and it can kind of short circuit your brain and make you believe that things happen really quickly when they honestly do not. Things that last take time. And you really have to give yourself the time. You have to know that you deserve your own time. And I think for a long time, I don't believe I deserved my own time. And that was evident in how I was living my life. It was evident by how I was allowing people to treat me. And most importantly, it was evident in how I was treating myself. And I think a lot of times we don't want to be honest with ourselves about that. We want to act like everything's perfect and like we have shit that doesn't stink. But let's be honest here. Okay, we all have shit that don't stink. All right, we all have stuff that we could work on. We all have stuff that we can change so we can become a better, higher version of ourselves without the drugs. And that is what I've been noticing, okay? I've been noticing that a lot of times when I avoid doing something, it's because there's a feeling there that I'm trying to escape. So, perfect example of this, right? I have been working through all my bar teacher training stuff, and honestly, I've been doing really well on all this stuff, in my opinion. I'm almost at the end, and I know I keep saying that, but it definitely took me 2 months instead of 1 month. And you know what? That's my timeline. I had a lot of stuff to overcome mentally to even get here, to get myself to study on a daily basis, to the point where now I'm practicing my class at least once a day. And I think that's great because it's a 50-minute class. So just going through all my memorized class at least once, and then looking at some of my manual and all that stuff and plugging some other stuff in, I think that's great, because that means it's taking me at least an hour of my day where I'm just pressing into that. And I think that's way better than nothing, especially coming from the fact that at one point it was like 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day that I was doing. And now I'm just ramping it up because I'm getting so close. So I'm proud of myself. But I recognize that before I would study that, I would feel this feeling of like, oh, like I don't want to do this. I don't feel like doing this. And I'm like, where does this come from, right? Because ultimately, when I think about me being a certified bar instructor, that is going to put me in a position of being hyper visible to all the people that I teach. Every time I go and teach a class, I'm going to be the one leading the class. And if you've had a belief of feeling like you have this fear of being seen, when you're seeing things happen and it's just not comfortable, maybe people ostracize you or anything like that, or people can see that you mess up too. Like, it could really be anything. But one of the things that I've really struggled with has been that I don't think I wanted to be seen, because I felt like during a lot of points in my life, I haven't tried to be seen. It's just something that has come with my energy, I guess. And then it has hurt me in the past. You know, it's made me a target at times. And I think you really have to get over those feelings and recognize that just because something happened in the past doesn't mean that it has to define where you are right now and where you're going in the future. And it's really important to realize this, because our feelings can be so loud. It can a lot of times be that voice in your head that's like, who do you think you are? What are you doing? Like, you should go on a walk instead. You should go do this thing instead. You should go watch some videos instead. Like, don't do what's going to help you get to where you want to go. Do something that goes against that, so that that belief that you hold, where you have this fear of being seen because you're going to mess up, you're only going to validate that, because as soon as you go to a class or as soon as you go to a training session and you don't know the choreo because you didn't study, then it's validated, right? So I've really had to fight against that, or I won't say fight. I've really had to hear that voice out and say, hey, I get that this is attached to a belief that I'm shedding, but I don't align with this and I am letting you go and I'm going to do the thing that I don't want to do anyway. And it's just really been helping me to transcend an identity that I no longer align with, okay? And obviously there are times when it pops up and maybe I do go smoke the weed, or maybe I do wait a little longer to do the studying for my bar teacher training, but I end up doing it. I end up doing the studying. I end up recording the podcast. I end up doing what I need to do because I recognize that if I let that voice win, then it's running my life. Like, I'm not in control of my life. It's this voice, and I've actually named this voice Gruber, okay? Gruber wants me to be unhappy. Gruber wants me to be this individual who feels like the world is against them, and I don't align with Gruber, okay? Gruber is that shadow self that was scared and was created out of a real necessity based on things that happened in my life. But Gruber does not have to rule my life and be the leader of my life. I can choose to allow my higher self, my soul, to lead my life. And I hope you do the same in your life. And I think once you start to become aware of the traits of that other self, as I'm going to call it, then you really can't go back. And this comes with observing, right? You observe how you want to react when you're feeling stressed, when you feel like you're challenging the identity that you want to shed. It's when you start to notice those emotions and observe those emotions that you can call out when something that you're doing is a result of this old identity that's trying to keep you trapped in an identity that is not helping you get to where you want to go. Because let's be honest here, if you want to change something, you are going to have to change. That means you are going to have to give up aspects of yourself that are not in alignment with the version of yourself that has a success, that has a healthy body, that has the career of their dreams. Like, you are literally going to have to let that part or those parts of yourself go. And this really does require an ego death. And I know for myself, I've had many ego deaths at this point. I'm sure I will have more in the future. And I'm going through one right now. And you kind of have to ride the momentum. Like, when you start to see yourself change and when you're doing new things that are bringing new things into your reality, you have to continue with that momentum. And you can't allow a day or two to go by where you're not contributing actions towards that version of yourself on a daily basis. Like, you have to do it because that consistency is going to snowball and eventually cause an avalanche. Okay. It's just extremely important, right? And ultimately, I think this is going to help you to really dissolve this ego that you have around that old version of yourself. And you have to recognize that the ego loves identity, right? So if you become the type of person and let's say you were once the type of person who never worked out. And I've heard people make statements like this, like, oh, I hate working out. I don't like running. I hate smoothies. I don't like salads. Like, I don't like vegetables. And every time someone says something like that, they are speaking into existence an identity that they are aligning with. And it's like, if that identity isn't helping you, why would you continue to reinforce it in your life? It literally makes no sense, okay? And that's why I personally don't like to say certain things. Like, I am not going to be like, oh, I'm anxious, I'm lazy, I'm not doing enough, I'm broke. Like, I'm not going to say things like that because it's not going to help me. You saying things like that to yourself is not going to help you, because when you put these spells on yourself, they manifest in your reality. And like, maybe this is kind of crazy, but when people say things to me And I don't align. I say I rebuke. If they're like, oh, well, what happens when this happens? I'm like, when? Who said that's going to happen? And I was like, that's a spell that I am not accepting. I rebuke. And I think it's important to do that because we don't realize how often we put spells on ourselves, and are they helping us or are they hurting us? Okay. And I used to be the type of person who'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm so awkward. I'm so awkward. But I recognized that that wasn't doing anything for me. Okay. It wasn't doing anything for me. So why would I affirm it? It makes no sense. So the observer instead would be like, there's awkwardness here. There's anxiety. There's resistance. I'm noticing a pattern, because then you're not attaching yourself to that ego-driven narrative. You're just literally noticing that something exists and you're saying, curious, interesting that that feeling is there. Let me unpack why that feeling is there, understand it, take it to dinner, see how we can resolve this, and recognize that this is not me. This is just a feeling that I'm having in this given situation. And how can I actually transmute those feelings and look at it from a different perspective? Because ultimately, perspective is everything. Depending upon the perspective that you have on anything, person, place, or thing, that is ultimately how that person, place, or thing is going to show up in your life. That's just how it is. And yes, this is a subtle shift, but it creates huge space for you to really explore the realm of possibilities and see that ultimately, yes, you are the creator of your life. And yes, the emotions that you have about a given person, place, or thing, again, is going to determine how that person, place, or thing shows up for you. So if you decide that, yes, I'm about to embark on this new journey, I'm a bit anxious about it, I'm a bit fearful of how it's going to turn out. Is this the right decision? You can have all those feelings, but it's not something that you have to internalize. We're humans. This is a human experience. We have human feelings, human emotions. But again, emotions are energy in motion, right? So do you want to have the type of energy that is going to be fueling your dreams or destroying your dreams? And this is exactly where your perspective comes in. Because if two people experience, let's say, a car wreck, and one person sees it as, oh my God, this sucks. I'm not going to have a car for a while, and my insurance is going to go up, and this and that. And the other person's like, I really have been wanting a new car. Like, maybe this is the catalyst for me getting a new car. I'm alive. I didn't hurt anything. I have insurance. Like, it wasn't even my fault, the car accident. So maybe something good will come out of this situation. The person who's thinking positive about it is going to have a positive experience with it. Obviously, it wasn't anything that was a great experience to have. Like, let's be real here, okay? But the person who perceives it as something that's going to help them, as opposed to the person who perceives it as something that is horrible and they have bad luck and all that, that is going to determine how they experience that situation. And I have just found this in my life, and I don't know why sometimes it takes for me to get into like a quote unquote bad situation for me to see it in a positive light, because this has happened to me on a few occasions where I was at like a rock bottom experience and it turned around simply because of my mindset. Like, that's the only thing that turned it around. So I actually had this experience when I was in San Francisco. And I essentially overstayed my welcome living on a couch in this home, like where I was living with like 3 other people. And I was also working at a fast casual dining spot in downtown SF. And honestly, like, I was not being financially responsible. I also wasn't making enough to really sustain myself in San Francisco. So that's why I was living on a couch and I literally wasn't paying, which was great, but it gave the people who I was living with the power to be like, yo, you need to get out because like you were supposed to find your own spot. So I'm taking all of my stuff because I had to essentially move out one day because they were like, you guys, you got to go. And I was like, okay, sure. So I ended up lining up another place for me to stay at. But in order to get there, I had to take the BART, which is Bay Area something transit, regional transit, I think, from South San Francisco, which is a little south of San Francisco, into the Mission District. And so I take the train there with all my stuff. I had a carry-on suitcase, and I had other stuff that I'd acquired because I'd been in SF for about like 7 or 8 weeks at this point in time. So I take all my stuff and I get off the BART in the Mission. And I remember I was walking up the street or down the street and I tripped on this slab of concrete and fell flat on my face. And I literally, like, it's so crazy. I just screamed in the middle of the Mission. I was like, ah! Like, I just had to let out my emotions. And then I think after that, I just started laughing because I was like, what the fuck is my life right now? Like, it can't get any worse than how it is for me right now. Like, I actually know that. I don't even really know what is in store for me next. I just got kicked out of this place. I have all this shit with me. I have like little to no money. Like, what the fuck am I doing? Why am I in San Francisco? Why did I decide to come out here? What is the point of all this, right? This is what's going through my head. But at that moment, after life came at me fast and I fell on my face, but luckily, like, I was able to catch myself with my hands. I decided from that moment that it was only going to get better from there. And it actually did get better from there. I remember I met up with the friend who I was going to be staying with for a few days before I headed out to LA. And we like ended up chilling at a bar, and it was like very chill. I didn't have to worry about taking any more public transit for the rest of the day because I put my stuff in their car. And then we drove back to where they were staying. And they were staying outside of, I think, Oakland. So we had to cross the Bay Bridge and all of that. And it just felt like from that moment when I decided that it was going to get better from there, it did. Okay. And after that, I think I spent like 2 days in SF. And then I went out to LA where I had an aunt who was living there. And my mom was going to be out there for like a few days. So from there, I ended up staying in LA for about like 5 weeks. Had some interesting experiences. And I was staying at my aunt's house. So it was like a totally different vibe. And I had access to a car at times. So it was just like a completely different vibe. And I can see how my life did get better from there. But again, it was definitely a mindset thing. And it's not to say that my life just got better from there and it's just been going up. I think I've definitely had to learn some more lessons that I didn't want to learn because I was still clinging to a specific identity and I didn't want to let go of it. But still, I think that perspective shift had a lot to do with why my life got better. So when you are in that storm, right, it feels like chaos. It feels like, what the fuck do I do? What is my life right now? Why am I living? Because I've had those feelings before where you really question, was I just put on this earth to suffer? Like, what is going on here, bro? And I think this is where you being the observer really comes in, because when you observe the storm, you can plan your next move. So if you see you're in this storm where you've kind of been blowing up your life, maybe you've been blowing up your finances and you're like, okay, my finances are here right now. How do I change this? How do I decide that, yes, it may look like chaos right now. I may be broke. I may owe this person and that person or whatever. But how do I make a plan from here to change that? And when you can take that zoomed out approach, it doesn't seem so big anymore. It doesn't feel like this dark cloud that's over you. It feels like something that's manageable, something that you can break down into tasks that you can do today that will help you get there. And I think that's truly the most powerful position to be in, because ultimately, self-regulation begins with self-awareness. Stop being a victim in your life. You got yourself into a situation, which means you can get yourself out of it. Like, let's be so for real. A chaotic situation doesn't result after you doing nothing. It usually results after you doing specific actions over time that get you into a train wreck situation. So you have to then think backwards and say, okay, it took me steps to get here. It can take me steps to get out of here, but I have to have the right mindset, and then I have to apply the actions every single day so that one day I can wake up and be like, wow, I'm in a really great position in my life. No shit, because I worked backwards and got here. And not to say that the overall vision that you're going to have is going to be the exact vision that you go after. I think oftentimes we make visions and God has a much bigger plan for us, but we needed to start going in that direction first before the fuller plan could unfold over time. So I think one of the really interesting parts about becoming the observer in your life is that you really start to pick up on the people in your life who are mirrors to the type of person that you are, the type of actions that you took, and seeing someone act out a pattern that you used to have. So I think oftentimes these situations can be a bit triggering because you're like, oh my gosh, this person, they are so annoying. They do this, they do that. But usually when we get frustrated by people or we get very triggered by people, it's because they're reminding us of something that we have going on inside of ourselves that a lot of times we don't want to be real with ourselves about. It's the truth. You know it. Okay, I know it. There are things that I get really annoyed with when it comes to people. But honestly, I would say that has mostly gone away. I think I can now take a step back and be like, if I feel some emotions bubbling up inside of me about a person, about a situation, I can be like, why am I really feeling like this? And what is this sharing with me about myself? Like, I can take that step back, and that comes with being honest with yourself over time and not internalizing everything, because it doesn't have to mean something unless you make it mean something. You know what I mean? If someone's rude to you, you can see it as, oh my gosh, they're so racist, they're so this, or you could just see it as like, they're having a bad day, right? Like, this doesn't have to be about me. How someone treats you, how someone responds to you has more to do with them than it does have to do with you. And if you're bothered by it, that also speaks to some things that you have going on inside of you that you need to deal with, right? So noticing your reactions to others and tracing them back to your internal state is extremely important, because if you're a very calm person and you have a really great self-image, then when someone is rude to you or when someone disrespects you, like I said, you're not going to internalize it, and you're also not going to react, because I think a lot of times the people who have the most going on in their head, they want other people to be in that energy with them because they don't want to feel alone in that. And I've been really starting to observe like some of the people around me and how they respond and how they even try to neg me on and get me to be in a specific energy. And now I really don't take it personally. Like, more now I am reflecting on like, that's interesting. What can I learn from this? And it just puts me in a more empowered state. It allows me to transmute this energy and use it for my own good, because ultimately, if someone's trying to get a reaction out of me, they're trying to steal my energy. They're trying to steal your energy. They're being an energy vampire on some level. And are you going to allow them to suck that energy from you, or are you going to give that energy back to yourself? And I have decided I would rather give that energy to myself than give it to someone else. And that's all a choice that we get to make. So, for example, you could witness someone spiraling and realize, oh, that's what I look like when I spiral. And not to say that you are judging them. It's you simply observing their behavior, how they're responding to whatever stimulus has presented themselves. And you're seeing the growth, honestly, in your own self and how you have emotionally matured to see that not everything requires your reaction, because not everything requires your reaction, right? You have to ultimately observe this energy and decide what type of energy is going to help you the most in your life. What is the best thing for you to embody in any given moment so that you can put yourself in alignment with whatever your desired reality is? Because let's say you want to be a business owner. If every time you're hit with an inconvenience, you freak out, oh my gosh, life isn't fair. Why is this happening? It's going to be very hard for you to be a business owner because business can be erratic, all right? Business can be unpredictable. You don't know what's going to come next, but it's all about how you handle the vicissitudes of being a business owner, right? That's what enables you to be a better business owner. That is what enables you to not allow any one issue that you may face in your business to completely ruin you, right? You have to have a strong stomach for failure, for change, for anything, right? Like everything's not going to always be perfect, but the only thing that you can maintain in any storm is literally your mind. So if you can't maintain your mind, you can't expect that you'll ever be able to own a business. You'll ever be able to be super accomplished in your field of choice because you have to be able to handle the shit that comes with it. And yes, there's a lot of amazing things that come with being a business owner or being super well known in your fields, but it also comes with a lot of shit. And can you handle it? Okay? And if you can't handle it, then it's going to be very, very difficult for you to have the life that you desire. So you ultimately have to notice what creates friction and what feels effortless. What type of actions enable you to be in a flow state? What type of actions feel like you're not working? You know what I mean? Like, what are those things that you can do where time just goes by and you look up and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's been 3 hours. Those are the things that you ultimately need to lock into because those are giving you keys as to the things that you should be integrating into your life on a daily basis, right? I think a lot of times we are just in the wrong field of work. If we're not experiencing the type of success that we desire, it's because we're not doing the things that are in alignment with our authentic selves. And those are the only times when life flows by effortlessly, when it's not something that you have to will yourself to do. It's just something or is something that is related to who you are as an individual, right? That's the most important thing. And that's why you have to track your flow states and get used to like, what are these patterns? What are these things that you really enjoy? You also have to catch yourself mid-doubt. So if you feel like you are in the process of changing yourself. So in my example earlier, it could be that oh yeah, I have to study my bar teacher material, but I don't want to. I'm tired. This feels like it's pointless. I don't know this yet. You stop yourself and you're like, okay, yeah, if I don't know it yet, maybe I should practice. Maybe I should just do a run through. Maybe it'll feel better afterwards, right? You catch yourself and you do the action anyway, because that's the only way that you will actually progress. That's the only way that you will get where you want to go. And you have to ultimately, like I mentioned earlier, change the structure from which you've put yourself into a structure that is conducive to your success. So create a vision of the life that you'd ideally like to have and think backwards from that of the type of person that has that life, the type of actions that they do on a daily basis, the type of mindset that they have, and how they approach any perceived problems that they have in their reality. Do they see it as something that is saying, oh my gosh, this means I should just give up? Or do they see it as something like, this is an interesting challenge. What type of person am I going to become as I find a way to get over this? Because that millionaire version of myself, they know how to get around this problem. This problem isn't a big mountain. This problem is a little anthill. It's nothing. And it's only when you can really get outside of that and you can look backwards, that you can actually connect the dots. So it's just important to keep that in mind. So now for our TBH rant, stop micromanaging the universe. I think a lot of us, we don't realize how controlling we are and how we really want to predict every single thing that's happening in our life. Okay? Even when it comes to having a grand vision of what you'd ultimately like to create, you have to recognize that you may think that the way you get there is one way, but there are infinite possibilities, infinite ways that you could get to that destination. So when you cling on to it being, well, I have to do this thing first, and then it's going to lead to this thing, and then it's going to lead to that thing, and then I'm going to get there. What if there's a better way? What if there's a more scenic route that you will enjoy that's going to feel effortless, instead of you feeling like you have to force yourself to do something that's not in alignment? And that only comes with you zooming out and you basically surrendering to the vision and trusting that all of your steps are aligning to that grand vision. So whether it's this thing or that thing that you do next that takes you there, it really doesn't fucking matter. And I know I've been kind of in this weird phase. I won't call it weird, but I've been in this interesting phase in my life where I have been typing a lot into Chat GPT, basically my vision that I have. And then I've been asking it like, hey, can you work backwards from this and give me some steps that I can take in the here and now that will get me there? And I think there's something that's great about that, obviously, but I also think there's an aspect of analysis paralysis where you're still trying to figure out everything that's going to happen between you and the accomplishment of this dream, which simply is not going to be possible to predict, because things are going to happen that are going to come out of left field that are going to help you and that are going to get you closer to your desired reality. And you have to be okay with the fact that you're just not going to know how that's going to happen. And I think the more that you try to plan, and you don't put in the actions that are actually going to get you there, you are kind of tricking yourself into believing that you're doing something that's useful, but really you're not. Really, it's just like self-help porn type situation, right? Where you're literally just thinking about things, but you're not doing anything. You're not putting any actions towards it. And you have to put the actions in. That's the only way that you're going to get there. So when it comes to the reflection ritual, the prompt is, what patterns have I been noticing in myself lately? Where do I feel most reactive? And what would it look like to observe instead of fix? The action that I want you to take is spend one day this week just observing. Don't try to change anything, just notice. Bonus points if you journal at the end of the day. So try this out, guys. I'm interested to see if you want to leave a comment on the YouTube sharing what came up. Let me know. Otherwise, thank you again for tuning into another episode of The Reflection Hour, and I will see you all in the next one.